Hi, Jerry. Thank you so much for coming. Oh my gosh, there's so many people have been signing up for this talk, and obviously everyone's pretty excited about how to learn how to work with banks.
I'm still learning, so I'm just as excited.
So I was wondering if you could tell me what your background is, what brought you to a fintech startup?
So I was born and raised in Haiti. I moved to the States when I was 10. And for me, financial services or the impact of financial services or the lack of access to financial services was something that I learned very early on and saw when my parents moved here, and I saw the costs of being underbanked and unbanked. And it's something that always stayed with me, understanding that there were people with true intent, real intent, but just didn't have the access or the capacity and figuring out a way to bridge that was not something I initially set out to do. I went to the University of Florida for undergrad, studied finance, went to Tyco International right after working in Treasury, and then went to business school at the University of Virginia. After business school, went to Wall Street and was working on Wall Street. So it was never really the first thing in mind. And to be honest, I've always felt like I always knew I wanted to do my own thing, but I never thought it would be a fintech company. But just having been on Wall Street during the time of chaos and realizing the things that we were doing to help major companies were also as applicable to consumers who are going through financial stress at the same time, much like the other major companies were going through. But they just didn't have the tools. They didn't have the bankers who were sitting there trying to figure out the right solutions for them. And so they just didn't have the resources. And thinking through my experience during that time helping major companies and trying to figure out how do we apply some of those same logic, some of the same processes, some of the same ideas in the consumer space to help people who were in financial distress. So I ended up here not strategically, but more so as something that was a personal passion and a personal interest, and as well as a professional interest. I've been in finance my whole life. I really like finance, and I think it's access to capital is almost akin to being a human right, and it's not always there. And so this was an opportunity professionally to create something that has a lasting impact, a social impact, and potentially a system impact.
Wow, what a story. It's very inspiring. Thank you so much for sharing that. Tell me a little bit then about how you got into setting up Lendstreet.
Yeah, so thinking back through, I personally was an investor on Prosper, lending money to consumers. And so as I thought about the Prosper model, the marketplace model, it was emerging. It was really exciting time. And it proved that individual investors or people were willing to lend to each other. And a lot of the loans that were being done were for consolidation loans. And a lot of them were to consumers with low FICO, low credit score. So I was thinking through some of thinking through the things we were doing and knowing that there could be a better solution for consumers who are going through financial distress, and understanding and seeing this burgeoning marketplace lending and the traction that Prosper was getting at the time, and thinking how do we leverage a similar model to create a product that actually helped people get out of debt, and also at the same time help banks manage risk to their portfolio and improve their recovery. So I've always thought of our model as one that's not attacking the banking system, but plugging into the banking system to make it more secure and hopefully decrease the costs, to the entire, population. Because the more secure we can make the banking system, the lower the interest rate on the products that the banks sell, the lower the cost to consumers, and overall we have a better system. And so that was always the view, and just thinking through, how do we leverage marketplace lending to create a product that was beneficial to the entire ecosystem, and in 2010, I left banking to focus on that. Um, as you can imagine, banks were not really open to thinking through different new ideas at the time, partly largely because their focus was on trying to shore up their own balance sheet, dealing with the new regulatory environment, and making sure they could pass their stress tests, right? Um, so we ended up pivoting towards a different group to source customers and to prove out the concept. So, and I've always felt technology as a concept is really meant to be a tool to democratize, whatever industry you can think of, right? I mean, it's being proven, whether it's in the taxi world, whether it's in the hospitality world, and banking is no different. It's really creating accessibility to all of these different parts of our ecosystem or economic ecosystem. So, and I was excited. I was excited about the idea that we could create a product that not only help consumers, not only improve access, but could potentially have systemic impact across the board and create something that's different, that's unique, and have real value proposition.
Wow. Thank you so much. Thank you for creating Lendstreet, and thank you for your passion. It's fabulous. Tell me, how do you feel about the banking industry? You said that basically your focus is working with the banks. In general, what would you say about that?
Yeah, I think, look, the banking industry is not lacking for opportunities for change. But it's also an industry that's deeply rooted in years of legacy practices, technology, and so forth. So it's always going to be harder for them to move at the speed that a Silicon Valley organization move. It's just it's not for a lack of wanting to. It's not for a lack of investment. I think I was quoted recently that Bank of America invests about $10 billion in technology every year, and $5 billion of that is just on compliance, right? So,
wow.
So I think we look at the banks, and for some organizations, the idea is to completely eliminate banks. First of all, I think that idea is far-fetched, right? You will never beat the banks in terms of cost of capital. That's just not going to happen. Right? And so as an organization or trying to disrupt the space, the question is, how do you make the banks better? How do you make the process better for the consumers? How do you make the experience better for the consumers? And how do you make it better overall in terms of access? And so there are different ways to do that. And I think we're seeing, again, very exciting innovations, whether it's through the blockchain, whether it's through, the Prospers and Lending Clubs of the world making a product that the banks, quite frankly, never really had interest in doing or weren't doing much of. So creating that product, increasing access to capital for consumers is also very important. And I think more and more as we look at different industries, insurance, payments, all of those are getting disrupted, and it's a better experience for the consumer. So I think the banks broadly understand that and recognize that and acknowledge that, and you're seeing changes. Capital One has bought now, I think, one or two design firms that are embedded in their product development process. Bank of America is investing quite a bit of technology. J.P. Morgan investing a bunch in technology, and so and they all understand they have to evolve as organizations, not because I don't think to paraphrase J.P. Morgan's CEO, Silicon Valley is coming, but I think the banks also understand that they have such a moat, whether it's from a regulatory perspective, whether it's a capital advantage. So they have a real moat. So I don't think any bank is shaking and losing sleep over, but they also acknowledge there's new processes, there's new models. And how do we leverage those models to create better experience for our consumers, our clients, or how do we create or emulate some of those processes to better our organization? So, overall, I think we've always viewed that long term, the companies that will thrive in this space is not the ones who necessarily think the banks are going away, but are the ones who understand that there are many options, there are many possibilities, and you're never going to displace the entire industry, but you can really make a dent in changing the way the industry operate, and get some market share in the process and improve the entire experience for consumers.
So I'm pretty excited doing these FinTech talks because I get to be a part of the FinTech community, and I'm impressed. I was just telling Trevor, I'm very impressed by the sense of community within this ecosystem, or this part of the ecosystem. And I haven't come across it in 7 years. I see lots of changes in the startup ecosystem, but it's like coming back to those days.
Yeah, I think collaboration is just part of Silicon Valley's DNA, and we saw it with PayPal, right? The story about PayPal is that Elon was building something, and Elon Musk was building something. Peter Thiel was building something somewhere else. Then they got together and say, well, both of us are trying to solve the same problem. Let's just get together and solve it. And they built PayPal, which we all know the story after that. I think collaboration. Building businesses it's tough, it's hard, and I think because of that, there's a shared bond amongst the masochists in the valley who choose to go down that path, and I think that's why we see the level of collaboration that we see today.
So tell me, just to finish off, where do you see the future of FinTech? What's your vision of it?
Oh man, yeah. I don't think we've touched even the tip of the iceberg. I don't even think we're seeing the tip of the iceberg. I think the iceberg is still below water, and we're trying to find it with a microscope or with a telescope, because financial services is such a massive industry. In the number of products and the range of products and that involves in the space is tremendous, and we're starting to see some innovation in different areas, but I think long-term FinTech has the potential, again, not to displace the banks, but I think to really partner and deliver a much better product, a much better experience, and overall we'll eat some market share and improve the process, and I think the banks will benefit greatly, consumers will benefit greatly, and the FinTech innovators will benefit greatly. But I see a day where, I'm a strong believer in Mark Andreessen's comment that software will eat the world. And I don't think we're too far off, for that to happen. But it's going to take a longer time in the FinTech space, particularly because there's so much regulatory requirements around that space. It's not like you can just show up and put up a shingle tomorrow, and there's just an inherent moat, an inherent barrier to entry in that space. So I think more capital will come into the space. I'm bullish. Obviously, I've taken on this journey, so I'm incredibly bullish about the role of FinTech, the role of technology, and the role of entrepreneurs, innovators, and creating a better financial system.
So I guess why it's exciting is we get to be real pioneers.
Yeah,
I'm from Australia.
Exciting and scary, all at once. You have to commend the early pioneers who've forged their way and made it possible for companies like ours to take root. Right. I mean, if it wasn't for Prosper or Lending Club's success, I'm not sure we'd have any leg to kind of create that product or talk through that product, right? If it wasn't for and I think you're seeing more and more, and we'll continue to see more and more new players in the space that have success. You look at the Betterments of the world, the Wise Banyans of the world. There's a lot to be excited about. You look at Ripple, you look at blockchain, you look at Ethereum, all of these different new technology that will help, when we do a wire today, rather it be instantaneous, you still have to wait an hour or 30 minutes for it to pop up. Or ACH, why do we need to have 3-5 days ACH process, right? So I think technology is going to take what has historically been an archaic system and move it forward and improve the entire system for everyone. And hats off to the pioneers, and hats off to those people who are the masochists of this industry, who are having the sleep, taking on the sleepless nights and pulling out all their hairs to make the system better and improve the service and improve the experience for consumers.
I, for one, am grateful. Thank you so much for coming tonight, and I'm really looking forward to the talk.
Thank you.